good. I'd like to introduce the members of WyoJazz tonight. On vocals, Ray Camel. Kelly Pearson is playing keyboard and trumpet. Billy Wright, saxes and flutes. Kevin Tickens is on keyboard tonight. Peter Van Dyke, Latin percussion. John Francis on bass. And Ian McMullen on the drums. Into jazz history now. We come to the big bands era. Big bands became very popular in the 1920s and all the way through the 1950s. The 1950s and 40s were really the rise of the big bands. They were made up of multiple saxons, trombones, and trumpets. The big band sound was popular as the Roaring '20s gave way to the Great Depression and then World War II. Some of the biggest big bands were led by Glenn Miller, Benny Goodman, Count Basie, Lionel Hampton, and Duke Ellington. Duke Ellington was born in 1899. He was a master at writing tunes that were 3 minutes long. That was important because those fit on 78 RPM recording. Some of us might remember those. He wrote more than 1,000 songs. One of the most famous was Satin Doll, written in 1953. It was written as an instrumental, but once it became a popular song, Johnny Mercer wrote lyrics for it. Ellington used it as the final song for many of his concerts. WyoJazz will now perform Satin Doll by Duke Ellington. WyoJazz. Our next short stop on our jazz history tour is called the bebop era. As big bands dominated the music scene, another style of jazz called bebop began in the 1940s. It's a more cerebral style than prior jazz styles, and it marked a shift from jazz as entertainment to jazz as an intellectual art form. Bebop got started in World War II when many musicians went to war. With fewer musicians, bands got smaller, and music relied less on complicated big band arrangements and more on improvisation, fast tempo, and complex chord progressions. It started with late-night jam sessions with the Earl Hines Orchestra at Milton's Playhouse in Harlem, New York, with Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Thelonious Monk, John Coltrane, and Miles Davis leading the movement. Bebop originates from the sound of nonsense syllables that scat singers improvised during local jazz performances. Dizzy Gillespie was one of the greatest jazz trumpeters of all time. Born in 1917, his beret and horn-rimmed spectacles, scat singing, bent horn, pouched cheeks, and light-hearted personality provided one of bebop's most prominent symbols. WyoJazz is now going to perform A Night in Tunisia by Dizzy Gillespie. It was written in 1940. It is unusual in that it combines a Latin style of straight 8 notes at the beginning and then switches to jazz swing back and forth throughout. Pay attention to Vika Van Dyke on the percussion as he provides a Latin sound. 1930s and early 1950s. It was a reaction to the complexity of bebop. Cool jazz had a laid-back, smoother sound that focused on more formal arrangements, again, like the big bands, and less on individual improvisation. Famous players included the trumpet player Miles Davis. He was the most influential, but Dave Brubeck, Stan Getz, John Coltrane, and Chet Baker were also all known as cool jazz artists. WyoJazz is now going to perform Stella by Starlight by Victor Young, written in 1944. It was performed by Harry James and got to 21 on the pop charts. Later on, Chet Baker and Stan Getz on the sax performed the song in 1952. Stella. dance. And by 1900, Broadway musicals were in full bloom with song, dance, and spoken dialogue. Musicals were popular because they were an entertaining way to escape the difficulties of life for an evening. 1927's Showboat was an important early musical. Lerner and Lowe were two of the most important Broadway musical composers. Lerner was the lyricist and Lowe wrote the music. They were known for several important musicals, My Fair Lady, Camelot, and Paint Your Wagon. A popular Lerner and Lowe musical is Brigadoon, in which two American tourists stumble upon Brigadoon, a mysterious Scottish village that appears only once a day every 100 years. Tommy, one of the tourists, falls in love with Fiona, a young woman from Brigadoon. WyoJazz will now perform the first hit by Lerner and Lowe, Almost Like Being Loved, from the 1947 musical Brigadoon. The song has become a jazz standard and will feature Ari Koppel on vocals. Forward in musical history, we now enter the 1970s and the 1980s when jazz, funk, and rock fusion becomes a very popular musical style in the jazz world. The music ranges from strong jazz improvisation to soul, funk, or disco with jazz arrangements, jazz riffs, and jazz solos, and sometimes soul vocals, and often used electric instruments like Rhodes electric piano and the electric bass. Notable players in this style were Herbie Hancock and Miles Davis. Freddie Hubbard was known as a bebop and hard bop artist, performing with many of the greats of this time. He performed solos on Billy Joel and Elton John albums, and in 1970 he recorded The Straight Life, a soul and funk-influenced album that included the song Mr. Clean by Weldon Irvine. WyoJazz will now perform Mr. Clean.
Bye.
Now for something completely different. We go on in jazz world to light, smooth, contemporary jazz. And that's an umbrella term for a variety of different music that became popular in the late 20th century and the early 21st century. The umbrella term encompasses two main subgenres, modern jazz and smooth jazz. The music is heavily influenced by funk, pop, and jazz fusion and draws on hip-hop, rock, and world music. Musicians like WyoJazz, Spyro Gyra, Chuck Mangione, Chick Corea, and George Benson all performed in this style. WyoJazz will now perform a contemporary jazz song by Keith Phillips, who was a New York Broadway pianist along with his wife. He moved to Jackson, Wyoming in the late 1990s and unfortunately died from cancer in 2016. The Jackson Hole Gazette said that although he played for years on Broadway in New York shows like Cats and Les Mis, Phillips never grabbed. WyoJazz will now perform Phillips' Blue, written around 2001. Jazz was a result of a long process of interaction between American and Cuban styles, led by Brazilian bossa nova artists who immigrated to the United States. Antonio Carlos Jobim was a Brazilian composer, pianist, guitarist, songwriter, arranger, and singer, and considered the greatest exponent of Brazilian music. He internationalized bossa nova, and with the help of important American artists, merged it with jazz in the 1960s to create a new sound with very popular success. The music uses percussion instruments, different from the drum kit, and WyoJazz will now perform Suddenly Samba by Neil Larson, an American jazz keyboardist, arranger, and composer. He was the band director for the armed forces during Vietnam, and he performed with the Greg Allman Band, George Benson, and Miles Davis. Sudden Samba. almost concludes our musical tour for this evening. I'd like to make a couple quick thanks. Again, Robert Husa from Arts in Action, thank you very much for having the performances tonight. Thanks to Central Wyoming College and Alec Henderson, Brad Peterson for the sound. And our final piece, WyoJazz would like to perform a summary for you. It was especially written for WyoJazz by Kevin Tippett for this performance. Listen for many elements of the music you've heard tonight, from Baroque, swing, funk, and other influences. The piece is Intervention Number 1, written by Johann Sebastian Bach and arranged by Kevin Tippett. Thank you, and good night.